Coming up, Legends of Design goes racing. For over a century, the world's greatest automobiles have competed on such legendary racing circuits as Sebring, Silverstone, the Nürburgring, and of course, Le Mans. Among those great automobiles can be found the enduring name Aston Martin. And GT Joey visits with a special guest who tells us about what is perhaps the most successful racing Aston in history.
In 1959, Aston Martin won the World Championship, and it also won Le Mans. And Aston withdrew from racing and gave over its racing team to John Ogier, who went and ordered 3 lightweight DB4 GTs, which were a new car to run against the short wheelbase Berlinettas of the Ferrari Scuderia. And this is one of the 2 that Ogier finally used. It was run by Jimmy Clark, Innes Ireland, Roy Salvadori. Jimmy Clark was a 2-time world champion in Formula One.
He could race anything.
Yeah, and Salvadori won in the DBR1 with Carroll Shelby
in 1959.
In 1959
Sure.
in the DBR1. So there was the team had been together for quite a while. Innes Ireland had been with Jimmy Clark on the Formula One team in Lotus and had done exceedingly well. And raced this car probably more than any of the other drivers, and is quite well known.
What makes this car unique, it is a short wheelbase car compared to the regular DB4.
Yes, and much lighter. Most all Aston Martins at the time, the DB4s, the DB2 you have, they were aluminum, but this is a lightweight aluminum. It also has Perspex type windows, which were lighter weight. The floor is all aluminum. They took out a lot of weight out of the car.
It's good you brought up the difference from a DB2 to a DB4. The change in just that 6-7 years is tremendous. As we look in the back, we have disc brakes all the ways around at this point, at least.
Yes, you have disc brakes. Not only that, we have sort of coil-over suspension. It's a much more sophisticated car than both suspension-wise and a much larger displacement from a engine type.
Now, Jim, you've owned this car for a very long time, close to 40 years?
Close to 40 years.
Now, you've been using this for racing yourself, correct?
Yeah, I've probably raced the car, I have raced the car in over 380 events.
Wow.
It's been on the podium, I think 120 times and won like about 80 races.
It's just a great combination of style, beauty, and performance for these years, isn't it? You could get into more modern race cars, but they look like race cars. But you could drive this on the street, and it just looks as elegant as it runs.
Well, it's a very nice car to drive on the street. I wouldn't want to drive it in heavy traffic in New York because I have some cooling effects on it in a fan. But I wouldn't want to be in New York traffic at 90 degrees.
Waiting at the toll. I also see the little bug screen on the front. Is that what that was for? Was that for aerodynamics?
Yes, no, that was exactly for what you said. I guess they had a lot of bugs in England at the time. So when I saw the thing on there, I realized what it was. I saw all the pictures. I had it put back on the car. I've always enjoyed the car. It had a great history, and I bought it from Duncan Hamilton. Duncan Hamilton's father was a great driver, won at Le Mans and DJAG. So it's been a lovely thing to sort of keep for all these years, and hopefully someday, I guess it'll go to someone else.
Yeah,
but
GT Joey.
One of racing's most celebrated champions is the great Brian Redmond. GT Joey met up with this legendary driver at the Amelia Island Concours d'Elegance. Coming up on Legends of Design. Legends of Design had the pleasure of attending the Amelia Island Concours d'Elegance in Florida to drink in the sights and sounds of the sports car aristocracy under the bright Florida sun. Also attending was one of motor racing's most versatile champions, Brian Redmond, who competed in Formula One, sports car endurance racing, and was a two-time winner of the 24 Hours of Le Mans, along with numerous other victories in a wide assortment of race machines. GT Joey and Brian look back at his remarkable association with Jaguar.
Brian, tell me about your early days with Jaguar and everything else.
In 1961, I bought an X-Works XK120. Not a lightweight, but still X-Works. And I only raced it twice in the year, because the first time I raced it, I bought a new set of racing tyres for it, and I wore them off in one day.
Wow.
And I couldn't afford it. But in 1965, a friend of mine, Gordon Brown, who was a Jaguar specialist, he said, come and drive my ex-Sterling Moss lightweight aluminum-bodied XK120 in a time trial at Woodvale near Southport in Lancashire. I got fastest time of day. And he said, I know a guy, Charles Bridges, who's just bought the ex-Graham Hill lightweight E-Type. I'll get you a drive. Next day, Tuesday, the phone rings. He said, can you be at Oulton Park on Thursday morning at 8 o'clock? So I got there. There was this beautiful lightweight E-Type 4WPD, and I knew it was a great opportunity. I knew the track well, but I drove over my safe limit, went 3 seconds faster than the owner, Charles Bridges. And he said, what are you doing on Saturday, 2 days later? And I said, no. He said, race it. So in 1965, I raced the lightweight E-Type 15 times. And I was first 14 times and got beaten once by a Ferrari 250 LM at Silverstone in September of 1965.
Now, isn't it amazing just those couple of years going from an XK120 to an E-Type?
Well, it was completely different because the lightweight E-Type, it was a very special car. All the body was aluminum. The engine block was aluminum. It was fuel injected, and it was just a completely different thing. There's no comparison.
Night and day also with the disc brakes?
And the disc brakes as well, yes. The brakes were extremely good on it. And as you know, Jaguar pretty well, I won't say they invented, but they were the first to use disc brakes
and
in
really
competition.
perfected with racing.
Yes.
Did you have any other dealings with Jaguar along the way?
Not along the way, but in 1981, I'd won the IMSA Camel GT Championship in America, driving a Lola T600. And the team owner had plans for 82 weren't good, and I said, I'm retiring. And I went to Brumos Porsche in Jacksonville, and I hated being in the car business. And after a year, Bob Tullius of Group 44 rang me. He said, would you like to drive for Group 44? Would I? So I signed a contract the next morning, and for 3 years, 84, 5 and 6, drove the XJR5 and the XJR6 for Group 44 Bob Tullius.
Now, isn't that amazing, from 61 to 71 to 81, the XJR at that time, right?
Yes.
It was just a tremendous car at that time, no?
It was a very good car. Yes, it was. It was a straightforward car. There was nothing trick about it.
Right.
But it was extremely good. And we won the Miami Grand Prix in '84, driving with Doc Bundy. And then we won the Road Atlanta race in '86, driving with Hurley Haywood. And
now after that, you had a little stint with Aston Martin, didn't you, for a little while?
My last professional year was 1989, by which time I was already 52 years of age, so I wasn't a youngster. The Aston Martin AMR1 was a basically fairly good car, but it had been tested in England. Very, very smooth, like a billiard top surfaces. We go to the first race in Dijon in France. The track is rough, the car is unbelievably bad. Every time it hit a bump, the rear wheels came off the ground. And so about partway through the year at Brands Hatch in July, the engineer, Ray Dunnington, he engineered in about ½ an inch of droop in the rear suspension. And it was better. And we went to Le Mans, and really no hope, you know.
Yeah.
In the S's, through the twisty bits, we could stay with the factory Jaguars and Mercedes.
Right.
As soon as we got on the Melsan Straight, they were gone. They were doing 245 miles an hour. We were doing 215.
Matter of 3-4 laps, they're catching you.
Yeah, well, with only an hour to go, I couldn't believe it. We were still running.
Now, what are you doing these days?
Well, these days I come to events like this. I go
Right.
to Goodwood in England for 2 events.
You have your wonderful book that you wrote.
The book has been great. It came out this time last year. It was the first time we were actively selling it, and now we've sold 5,000, which is pretty good.
It's
Not bad.
beautiful, it's beautiful.
And I get $4 a book.
That's not bad, so you can pay the bills, or at least be able to come to Amelia
Yeah.
Island once in a while.
So, you know, we go to various things. I have a private club, Targa 66, which has been running for 26 years now. And we meet once a year in Palm Beach for 3 days, and we don't race. You bring whatever car you want, drive at whatever speed you want. There are
Right.
no restrictions, and it's been very good.
And then there's no pressure on anybody, so it's
No.
good, it's a fun event.
No, it's a fun event.
Coming up next, we travel to Carlisle Events in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, where Maria Prekagi shows us around the Import and Performance Nationals on Legends of Design, Astons and JAGS. Legends of Design, Astons and JAGS is brought to you by Princess Gates Entertainment, providing TV and film equity and financing solutions. Autosport Designs, one of the world's leaders in the sales, service, and restoration of vintage and exotic cars. And Carlisle Events, fueling the passion of automotive lovers around the world with shows, auctions, and more. Legends of Design is off to Carlisle, Pennsylvania, where every year the massive show fields at Carlisle Events come alive with the Import and Performance Nationals. To get the inside story of this unique automotive expo, Maria Prekagi spoke with Carlisle Events' Bill Miller.
Carlisle Events is known for their great car shows, the Import and Performance Nationals, no exception. Bill, this has been going on a long time, and there's something for everyone.
That's the best part about the import show. Not only do we have cars for the young people, the older people, and the people in between, we've got a variety of everything. There's a brand new Maserati here, and yet there's a 1957 Hillman with 650 horsepower.
I mean, the variety is great. As you said, something for everyone, which I love. How did this event start?
This event started in 1986, and only because imports started to really get hot in America. And you know, we started it out for the old cars, and all of a sudden we realized these imported cars are going to be something for the future. And you know, we just tried to stay on top of the market, and we started an import show. And we then got into performance and import, and that's what it's finally ended up to today.
And talk a little bit about your venue. You have a ton of great car shows. Why do people come here, and why do they love this area?
We've been doing this since 1974, and the Antique Automobile Club of America is in Hershey. We actually started Carlisle for the later model cars, and so we're kind of a combination, you know, between Carlisle and Hershey. We have something for everybody, but everybody still comes to Carlisle, whether it's old or new or something in between.
I first started coming here in the 80s because of the swap meet when it was just import Carlisle. We would, a friend of mine who was a Triumph guy, we would take a day off from the Pentagon and come up here on a Friday and go through the swap meet, just have a grand old time.
Bob, tell me about the car behind us.
This is a 2002 Jaguar XK8 convertible or open two-seater. And I've had it since 2006. And it has over 153,000 miles on it. I drive it everywhere. It's the best car you could ever have for two people to go on a great trip. So I love it.
And this is not your first Jag.
No, I've had, I gathered about 15 at last count, starting back in the 70s and rolling forward.
Now, do you still have all 15, or was it kind of a buy and sell one at a time?
Well, they've sort of come and gone. I won't ever like to say I bought and sold.
My first car, my very first car as a teenager was an MG, and I've always wanted to get another one of those, but after I was married, my wife says we have 3 kids, there's no room for the 3 kids, so we started looking for a Jaguar. We looked at about 12 cars before we found one that we were willing to put down the money on, and we've owned this car for 11 years now. It's been a lot of fun. I like the looks we get going down the road because it's a special car, it makes you feel special while you're driving it. You know, even my wife likes driving it, so it's a nice driver's car.
Modern exotics, outrageous modified sports cars. This is where everyone's taste for mild and wild can be satisfied.
The Import and Performance Nationals, Carlisle, PA. Make sure you come out because there really is something for everyone.
Coming up, we'll check back with Maria in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, where it's all about going fast. And GT Joey introduces us to another legendary racing champion from the past, David Hobbs, on Legends of Design. The Import and Performance Nationals attract such enthusiast clubs as the Jaguar Club of Pittsburgh, and members are anything but bashful about flogging their competition cats around the tightly twisting autocross course, as Maria found out.
There's a small race called a slalom. Orange cones in the parking lot, and the Jaguar Clubs of North America has a standardized slalom pattern. So we're able to compete against the clock and therefore against each other for national listings. There's ranking for the slalom winners, there's ranking for the show car winners, concours, and there's ranking for rallies, where you're driving around the countryside trying to follow your map. 3 different major activities in JCNA.
I love it. And you love this car because it performs so well in these races.
Well, it does. I perform in the modified class. Cars perform in their own categories inevitably, and I've modified this so that it's not your granddaddy's old XJ6 anymore.
I love it. Well, I'm not going to make you put the helmet on, but just another reason why the Jag is such a special car.
Racing has always been an unmistakable element of the vintage sports car experience. At such renowned racing venues as Mazda Raceway Laguna Seca in Monterey, California, classic Aston Martins take to the racetrack once again, and also provide one-of-a-kind photo opportunities and imaginative pit and paddock displays at these popular reunions. Along with great vintage race cars come great vintage race car drivers, such as David Hobbs, who GT Joey met with at Amelia Island and recalls how his racing career began in the cockpit of a Jaguar.
Tell us about your early days driving Jaguars as an apprentice.
Well, you know, when I left school, I didn't have enough brains to go to university, and so I became an apprentice at Daimler Car Company in Coventry. And then while I was an apprentice at Daimler, they got taken over by Jaguar cars, and so I became a Jaguar apprentice. And that's where I first met a chap called Norman Jewis, who was their test driver at the time.
Sure.
Obviously a lot older than I was, because I was just a kid.
Of course.
And I was a very poor apprentice, because I had started racing, and I raced my mum's Morris Oxford, then I raced my dad's Jaguar K140, and luckily, being an apprentice at Jaguar, I seem to have the ability to find parts that really fit this Jag very well, you know, like a new cylinder head, new carburetors, disc brakes. And they magically found their way from Coventry to Leamington Spa, where I lived, and onto the Jag. And I won a few races in the Jag, and I was still an apprentice. Then the following year, I raced a Lotus Elite, very successfully, and all these cars have my dad's automatic transmission on.
Oh, really?
Which is a 4-speed, fully automatic with a manual override, so it was pretty good to race. It's like having a sequential stick now. And this is all like 55 years ago.
How was it going from like an XK140 to like an E-Type and then eventually to the GT40s?
Well, the E-Type was pretty quick, a lot quicker than the XK140, much more aerodynamic, and different suspension, obviously independent rear suspension. So and the first time I drove the E-Type in a race was right here in Florida at Daytona for the 3-hour. In 1962, the very first race that Bill France put on the big circuit, you know, on the road racing circuit.
What a difference from 1961, 62, even up to 1969.
Oh, it was massive. But, you know, looking at it now, my career, I was hoping was going to be, you know, I was obviously hoping to be the youngest world champion. It obviously didn't work out, but, and I felt I was still pretty young, because today, I mean, I didn't start driving racing until I was 19.
Right.
Here's Max Verstappen. He's not 19 yet, and he's in his 3rd year of Formula One.
Right. So it's
Things have
incredible.
changed a lot.
It's incredible. Getting back now to Amelia Island, Your role here is, besides a judge,
What's Amelia Island?
it's just a beautiful location, isn't it?
That place, yeah.
It's just a beautiful location, but isn't it amazing what Bill does and this concours that he puts on every year?
Because I've known Bill for probably 40 years now.
Yeah.
Because when I was racing Formula 5000 back in the 1970s, Bill was a photographer working for, I think, Road and Track. But Bill was everywhere I went, and we got to know each other pretty well, you know, back in the early 70s, late 60s. And he was a terrific guy then. I had no idea how successful he was going to be. I remember we did a thing, he did a photo shoot with me when I was driving the Ferrari 512, the Sunoco car, with Mark Donahue.
Sure.
And we had a bit of a record run from Orlando back to Jacksonville, where he was living then, still is living today. And he still talks about that if you ask him. But when he started to put together this Amelia Island, I mean, who could have thought, you know, 22 years ago that it would have worked out like this? I was guest of honor in 2009.
That's right.
And we'd been here a few times before that.
Right.
And obviously I've been here pretty well every year since. It doesn't clash with the Formula 1 event. And it is just the most incredible event. And his perseverance and his ability to run it. And, you know, I mean, he keeps saying, oh, God, I wish somebody else would run it. But without him, it just wouldn't be the same.
It wouldn't be the same. And it's his energy and everything else he puts into it.
And he knows everybody. I mean, all the drivers that come here, they all know him, he knows them, and they come here because it's Bill.
Right.
They don't just come because it's Amelia Island, they come because of Bill.
It's true.
Yeah.
Well, David, thank you once again.
Oh, thank you,
for being
Joe.
on the show.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks to our special guests and our good friends at the Amelia Island Concours d'Elegance and Carlisle Productions. For GT Joey and Maria Prekagis, I'm Bill Stevens, and we'll be back soon with another episode of Legends of Design. This has been a Little White Dog production.